It is a product for a lifestyle circumstantial use, which we hope gives women more freedom. A lot of women ultimately end up resorting to surgeries just from the embarrassment and working out at a gym. Lots of women end up deciding not to work out as much publicly. And on average, it takes about 6 years for a woman to confess this to her physicians.
Welcome to Startup Health Now, the podcast where we celebrate the entrepreneurs and investors shaping the future of health. I'm your host, Logan Plaster, editor-in-chief here at Startup Health. The other day, I was talking to one of our top investors in health technology, and I asked her to what degree big investors drive the market to change. Does the writing of big checks direct the ship, or do big investors merely track behind what's already happening in the market? What she told me really stuck with me. She said it's the entrepreneurs who educate the market. They've done the hard boots on the ground work to understand the pain points and the customers and the financial drivers. My guest today, Evi Heilbrunn, CEO of Privy, embodies this particularly well. Privy, which joined Startup Health in 2020, is the maker of Finess, the first new technology to address women's bladder concerns in decades. Because she's tackling a stigmatized area of women's health, one that's been swept to the side for a long time, Evi has had to do her research and educate the market. But by doing so, she's showing retailers like Target, where Finess is now on the shelf, that women's health products were in need of an upgrade and that we're on the cusp of a whole new way of thinking about the women's health aisle. I hope you enjoy the interview. All right, Evi Heilbrunn, CEO of Privy. Great to have you on the show. Great to learn more about what you're building and really your trajectory with your company. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start just with who you are. Tell me a bit about your story, kind of how you got into women's health and into just the startup world. Kind of how'd you get there?
Sure. So I start the story early. In that I'm the daughter of two subspecialists. My parents, my father is still a practicing interventional cardiologist. My mother was a nephrologist, kidney specialist, and grew up really in a dinner table in the 1990s of two private practicing physicians in Pittsburgh, dealing with this movement from fee-for-service to value-based care into the 2000s, and watching as massive takeovers of payers coming in and sort of replacing the model that really has been the staple of American medicine in terms of private practicing and sort of an independence. And from that, I went to Penn and ended up spending several years uncovering the history of the first Black doctor to graduate from the university, who was a gynecologist in the late 1800s. And I say that to start that story because both of those early experiences were fundamental for me in terms of providing lenses into changes in American medicine, how diversity plays a role, and so forth. And so from there, really spent the last 10 years in digital health publishing. I had a variety of publishers on the consumer and the provider or healthcare professional side at the intersection of product development and audience growth. And through those experiences was able to really focus on questions about what it takes to create a digital product for user consumption, either for a patient or a doctor. And it was a really interesting experience that culminated in my last role at Meredith being the digital GM for the health and parenting vertical there.
Okay.
No less.
Interesting.
Meredith has 100 million women and are the largest publisher. And so that really sort of shone a light on the magnitude of activation across so many verticals in women's health. Of course, really turned my focus to the healthcare vertical there. And after making an investment in a pelvic health company earlier this year, I ended up getting connected to the founder of Privy. And that's sort of the early history of how I got here.
Did you feel, it's interesting, so around the dinner table with your parents, academically studying kind of what needs to change in the system, did you feel like it was important for you to move into a commercial product in order to kind of move that change forward, kind of take that next step in the process?
It had always been a dream of mine to be able to contribute in a really big way to a lot of the issues in healthcare, which frankly, they take their long cycles and they take a lot of time. CPG not excluded from that category, but just thinking about markets that move extremely slowly for a variety of reasons, the provider market, hospital systems, et cetera. Understanding that the real impact is being able to give someone something they take home through an aisle is the sort of the gold standard, I think, of impact in terms of just seeing that on a day-to-day basis. But that isn't to say some of these larger initiatives in terms of healthcare transparency with CMS data, for example, aren't so critical. So it was very exciting to me to be able to join a company that's doing that on the aisle. Yeah. I think that when you talk to people that run the largest personal women's health brands and have the largest reach, the gold mecca of these types of businesses is to have products that people use multiple times a week. And so in any category, that's kind of the gold standard. So I always dreamed of being in a business of having that kind of volume impact because it can just more quickly facilitate the next dimension.
Let's dig into Privy then. It must have been an awesome product and company to pull you away from Meredith, where you were having a pretty big impact already.
I think that the pandemic changed a lot of us in the sense of, sort of pulling back for a second and thinking about sort of everything, right? And so two things crystallized for me early in the pandemic. One was that it was an opportunity to really think about great change in the healthcare system in terms of rethinking just new directions. And so for me, given the momentum I was seeing in the women's health startup space, I thought it was a great time to move here. It certainly is a difficult decision always to leave, journalism and publishing and all of that great stuff. But surely those were invaluable experiences that I would use to go forward. I think one of the most interesting things about the Meredith experience actually was being able to sit in a room with many folks that were running different verticals, all catered towards a female demographic, right? And so when you're thinking about the challenges of audience growth and retention and engagement with a group that's actually thinking about approaching the same exact audience segment, but for different needs, it's really exciting because you get to sort of have layered conversations versus having a variety of verticals where you're sort of approaching very different markets. By and large, we're dealing with actually the core demographic of the Privy woman, right? Sort of this adult woman, 30, 65.
Now, I know that you have rolled out at Target recently, but many people might not know what exactly you've built. So talk to me about the Privy product and kind of the significance of having it roll out commercially this fall.
So Finess launched in 813 Targets. I have our trial pack SKU here, and behind me, some of our 36 and 12 pack SKUs. It was really exciting. Sorry, go ahead.
Finess is the product and Privy the company, correct?
Correct. So Finess is our first product. Finess is a product that is the first of its kind in an entirely new category of clinical innovation in the incontinence market, which is a $7 billion market or cap in the U.S. alone. 22 million women have incontinence. A little less than half of them probably have stress urinary incontinence, which is what Finess deals with, a light to a moderate bladder leak. And so it's a one-time use product where a woman places Finess, which is a soft patch, directly on her urethra, and a hydrogel adhesive, which is the same hydrogel that goes in contact lenses and other household items, sticks directly to her. So when she runs, she doesn't leak. Or cough or sneeze, which is the primary reason that someone would use Finess for that use. This is not a product for overactive bladder, although women who suffer from incontinence, usually onset by vaginal birth, have it the rest of their lives, and it continues. This is not really a secret to women I speak with, personally or professionally, actually. Many times conversations end with a mother in her 40s confessing to me she leaks and that she's excited to try Finess. Women are having these conversations. But until recently, until Finess hit shelves, the only options for women that were suffering from a light to a moderate leak was a pad. And the two chief complaints of our women, we've been selling D2C for several years now, are bulk from those pads or odor and wetness as a result of it. And so they like the convenience of Finess because they can use it when they exercise, they don't leak, which brings me kind of to another important dimension of Finess, which is how does it work? Finess isn't catching a leak at the opening of the urethra cavity. And so if we actually think for a minute about the bladder as being a whoopee cushion, okay, and the urethra being here, and then there being that little sort of, cavity, right, where the urine is going to pass through. The muscles around the urethra are what prevent a normal functioning bladder from not leaking. So okay, that doesn't happen when there's a lot of activity or that trampoline jumping is happening. But when those muscles get weakened, primarily from a vaginal birth experience, right, then some of that urine, a little bit of that urine can drop down. And so what Finess does is it acts like a wall. And so that urine comes down and bounces right back into the bladder cavity. And so women oftentimes will say, I used Finess and I thought I leaked, but I didn't. And the truth is they didn't leak. Again, for a light to a moderate leak, but it is a product for a lifestyle circumstantial use, which we hope gives women more freedom. A lot of women ultimately end up resorting to surgeries just from the embarrassment and working out at a gym. Lots of women end up deciding not to work out as much publicly. And on average, it takes about 6 years for a woman to confess this to her physician. So we need to really break into the opportunity to talk to women about this and find ways to reach them to help them.
You used the word confess twice. I think it's very interesting that a woman would feel the need to confess this to somebody versus, having open communication. And I wonder, what's the role of education here? What's the role of just opening up lines of communication about women's health?
Well, I think the first thing is that women's health is an every person's issue. I think that when we look at other markets like balding hair for men, that has become an everyone's issue. It is a man's issue, but a woman certainly knows about the prevalence of balding hair for men. Just in the same way, Privy, its mission as being sort of this clinical revolution in taboo women's health, OTC solutions, is to make everyone aware, make an everyone issue. And I think that the wave that we're riding here is all of us in this women's health revolution are trying to shed a light on different segments of that. For us and our first product, it's the 1 in 3. 1 in 3 women experience bladder leaks when they laugh, cough, run, or sneeze. Many women don't know that, although when they're told that, say, oh, well, all my friends have it. That makes sense. Men often are surprised. I was on the phone with a husband recently of a woman who gave birth to their second child, and only after having the second child and having pregnancy at all did she confess to him that she leaked. She confessed because it's not very sexy, if you will, to have to talk about these things as a result of something so amazing as having a child and then returning to your sexual life and having potentially something that may not impact you then, but certainly painful sex, dryness, all of these areas are areas of explosion. And so I think the first job is to start having this become an everyone's conversation point. Everyone should know that 1 in 3 women leak. Everyone should know about all of these other subsets of issues that women have so that we can start to create more choice in the aisle and frankly in the world about what is available to people who have any kind of medical issue.
Yeah, and by breaking down these taboos, we open up opportunities for just living your life, just for going on that run, like you said, and jumping on the trampoline with your kids, going on an active walk. What have you learned? I believe you rolled out in Target this fall. What are some of the things you've learned being in the aisle at Target? I'm sure you get a lot of consumer data.
So it's been really interesting. To back up for a second, Target discovered Privy and Finess in 2019, and that's really what accelerated our growth here in terms of movement into retail. They brought us on the shelves because of a corporate mission to bring more choice to their core shopper, who happens to be the Finess shopper in the personal care aisle. And so we were invited onto shelves as an emerging brand, not because of sales traction. I mean, we're doing almost $1 million in revenue to date, but still humble compared to some of the brands that are on that aisle and on those shelves, but because of mission. And because of just the huge opportunity that is ahead. By 2025, the incontinence market is estimated to double, and surely there will be ancillary benefits from just shedding a light, as you said, on these subjects. So while it's early days, we are seeing exciting signals from the movement. A majority of the sales are coming in through the door, which is really exciting to us. It's a pandemic. California is practically, again, in sort of a lockdown state outside of in your household. So the fact that women are finding this product in a store and buying it in the store means that education is actually happening in that aisle. And that's really exciting because as someone who comes from the digital side and seeing the opportunity in our D2C business and the inroads already made there, I wasn't necessarily expecting this, and certainly was thinking that we may have a very interesting digital approach to the education opportunity. Because of what we're seeing in the stores, we're actually in conversations right now to begin sort of more accelerated in-store promotions next year, just given the activity that we're seeing there and ways to amplify the education in the moment. Right, for her. The other interesting thing we've seen is that so that's clearly a need, right? But what also is interesting is that from retail, just being in retail clearly has an impact on just all of the things that are going into that chief household consumer, and however we talk about, the woman who's making the most buying decisions in her household. We are seeing our Amazon traffic really go up, and we're not really promoting there, right? We're putting almost all of our effort into Target directly. So to see that also tells us that there's a couple things happening. One is that women are hungry for a solution. Every SKU is moving, which means that, we have trial pack adopters. That's clearly the hit. It's the gateway to the gateway with 5 of them, but we're starting to see, even more pickup in 36 packs, which is really 36, $24.99. That's for her. She's really committed to this now for at least a couple months. Is truly exciting. And the second thing that also means is that women are starting to really price navigate this as well and start to look at that and just see where else it is. So anyway, not to go on too much longer, but really exciting signals. We've only received our first IRI report, which is the major report by which retailers benchmark themselves. In the category of Nielsen and so forth. So while it's early days, we're very excited, and we're excited to be working with Target already on ways to amplify in 2021.
Just to repeat something you mentioned a second ago about education in the aisle. I'm assuming that means you come to this particular aisle, you've got an issue, but you're not quite sure what you need, and the actual product offers you an opportunity to learn more about a solution. You don't necessarily come there looking for Privy because you might not know it exists. Like, where do you see the opportunities there growing in terms of the consumer experience becoming an educational experience?
It's an interesting question. I think that one thing for sure is, put yourself in the place of a 35-year-old woman that just gave birth and is starting to leak a little bit and doesn't want to know what to do, or the menopausal woman who's 55 and has been experiencing this for a while and has tired of just wearing pads. And she goes into that aisle, or more likely as a Target guest, she's discovering, right? She's going in for some other need, and she happens to get into that aisle.
Yeah.
And suddenly she sees a solution there that's nothing like she's ever seen before, right? And what we're starting to see is gravitation, right? And so while stigma in these categories, these stigmatized taboo categories, have what I think until recently really created a sort of wall to what we would call public conversation, right? Women are having these dialogues in Facebook groups. They're having them among other mothers, right? But they're not having them in broader places. And what we're now starting to see is that the first activation is not being afraid to try. So they're going and picking it up, right? Yeah. And then they're starting to retain. And so what I think that means is women aren't afraid to really lean in to having a new option. And they're willing to stand in that aisle and look at that option and explore it. Maybe do a little price check to see, hey, is it selling anywhere else? Oh, it's selling on Amazon, which is what some women have told me they've done when they're in the aisle. And so suddenly you start to see, oh, this may not even be about price sensitivity. This is about her. Well, is it sold at my other favorite place? Could I get it in 2 days? Is Prime option available? Right. And so what you're starting to see is just like any other household item, women are approaching this the way they would approach a Band-Aid. And that's exactly what we want. We want this to be everyone's issue. We want women to be able to go to the store, pick up some baby stuff, pick up some Finess, and go home.
Yeah. You're on the leading edge of trying to break down some stigmas in women's health and open up conversations. Where do you feel like that trend is going overall? If you look ahead to 2021 and beyond, do you feel like in other areas of health and in women's health that we're successfully moving the ball down the field in this direction? Do you see those stigmas and those barriers coming down?
Well, I see that the first job is to create noise, as you and I have discussed before, in terms of activating and talking, right? So that's the first job, is to have all of us in this village of women's health activators pushing forward, right, for this cause. In 10 years, I hope that we see a world that has even more privies in other subsections of women's health, whereas branding and marketing are impactful and necessary. But at the end of the day, the core differentiator of these businesses is innovation in clinical aspects of our life. When we see the movement now to home-based care and understanding that even more care will potentially be outside of facilities, certainly in the entrepreneurial world, there's a lot of movement to that, a lot of investment in that. And understanding what's going on with the aging population from the baby boomers, there's going to be a need for these clinical OTC solutions. And so to me, what's so amazing about Privy is that, packaging really matters here. And I think that, the goal here, and it's already working, is, and Target helped us with this too, but is just the simplisticness, everydayness of a household item like a razor that you buy at the store and you go home with. Of course, Privy and Finess is so much more than that. But in 10 years, what I hope is that we start to see consumer trust for clinical innovations that actually have safety and efficacy behind them, right? And that women are retained customers because they're getting a key clinical benefit out of it, which is helping, in our case, to solve a lifestyle need. And I hope that a lot of our consumerism in this space lends itself, in fact, ultimately goes even more towards investing in these clinical realms, particularly in CPG, because ultimately women are going to drive where the investment goes based on their purchasing decisions. So the fact that they are, as we would expect, interested, hungry, and ready to have solutions that meet their needs, I think that the future is going to be bright, and I hope that Privy Sets can be a part of that journey too. I'm excited to see what other markets in OTC health start to become activated in years to come. Of course, Hims and Hers has already made a huge impact on this market, and again, creating noise and shedding a light for the rest of us to come through and try to create subcategory revolutions.
Nice. I think it's a nice note to end on. Evi, thanks for the time and for the update. I know this is an exciting moment for Privy and for Finess, and I'll be excited to hear kind of future reports, whether it's with Target or direct to consumer with Amazon, kind of just how 2021 plays out. So thanks for taking the time for the update.
Thanks again, Logan, and thanks again for all the support from Startup Health. We look forward to future conversations.
Startup Health invests in health transformers from around the world who are committed to achieving audacious health moonshots. If you want to learn how you can join this community of entrepreneurs, or if you want to connect with one of our 330 companies, go to startuphealth.com. Thanks for listening to Startup Health Now. We'll be back next week.